A very warm welcome to you here at THEKI, your podcast for consciousness, health, and happiness. My name is Sandra, and we're starting right away with the Mandela Effect, with timelines, levels of reality, multidimensionality, 3D, 4D, 5D, and everything beyond that. Yes, I've been talking about timelines and the old and new matrix for years now, and I've already explained it in many different ways in numerous podcasts and also in my book. At the moment, we're experiencing a very crucial and exciting phase, so I'd like to shed light on the topic again, very specifically, and also explain it once more using the Mandela Effect. I already spoke about the Mandela Effect last year, and today I'm putting it into new contexts, including the different levels and other topics. So don't be surprised if you've already heard parts of this before. It's still new and different. It's simply a very beautiful clarity that we get in our current topic by understanding timelines and the Mandela Effect. So if we understand what's happening right now, we can compare it with our current decisions, relationships, and challenges. And then, of course, in a much more life-affirming and solution-oriented way, move forward again and make decisions and so on. Ultimately, every timeline is a frequency. And the Mandela Effect shows us that we do and how we do change timelines. The Mandela Effect gets its name from the former South African president Nelson Mandela, who passed away in 2013. But the strange thing was that after his death, many people came forward saying, he's been dead for ages. And so it emerged that there was a collective memory of many thousands of people that Nelson Mandela had already died in prison in the 1980s. And it's not just like, I think he died back then somehow, but they can remember all the news reports, all the images, announcements, and so on, as well as the funeral. So these are detailed memories that thousands of people share identically. And there are also some very strong differences in other world-famous memories that deviate from what you can research today. For example, many people remember that there were 4 people in the car during the assassination of JFK. According to videos, however, there are 6, at least according to the videos available today. Or take the Monopoly man with the top hat. Many remember him with this monocle in his eye. But he doesn't have a monocle in his eye anymore, and not even if you research very old pictures. He never wore a monocle on our current timeline. And so there are also many, film scenes, world-famous film scenes that thousands of people unanimously remember differently than they are seen now. Even though you can now also access the original series. This ranges from Star Wars quotes like this, "Luke, I am your father." According to the current status, Darth Vader said, "No, I am your father." From Lord of the Rings and Star Trek to Pikachu, there are all sorts of interesting comparisons. So how can that be? How can it be that thousands or millions of people remember a different reality than the one that is now generally valid here and also in the past, can be researched? With a single person, you can draw on possible explanations. Memories can actually be distorted by repetition or manipulation or even targeted questioning. But so many people worldwide have exactly the same memories and cannot believe that this can no longer be researched. I find that very, very striking because we all know the moments when someone claims something and we know exactly that it was different, and we sit down and Google it and can then prove it or find something about it. And now all of a sudden, all these people find that their memory is supposed to be wrong. How do you deal with that? So for me, it's completely clear the other reality also exists. but it runs on a different timeline, so to speak, in a parallel reality. And in this parallel reality where this past was correct, all these people who had the same memories were obviously still connected, and that they are now living in a different reality, so maybe you and I as well, in which a different truth or even a timeline of events has demonstrably always existed. This shows us that either these two timelines were merged together, and then one reality was perhaps a bit stronger and deleted the other one. Maybe one is stronger because there are simply more memories associated with it. Or the other one just dissolves at some point when no one is using it anymore. So it definitely seems to be the case that the people who have switched timelines still take their memories with them anyway. I admit this sounds totally crazy if you've never dealt with all of this before. And I know, of course, that new people are always listening here on my YouTube channel and in the podcasts. If this still sounds too abstract to you, I just ask you to listen to the earlier podcasts on this, because I've already explained a lot of it much, much more thoroughly there, whether it's about the change we're currently in, or about timelines, or whatever, about manifesting. I can't, of course, start from the very beginning every single time, but I already take some things for granted. But for me, it was clear right away that it must be parallel realities coming together here, because this topic is simply very familiar to me from my years of observation. So I've been officially speaking about timelines and the matrix in my podcasts and interviews for about 4 years, but of course I've known about it for much longer. But also in connection with manifestations, this is something very, very important. And that's exactly what I want to go into now. Because we are multidimensional beings, and the vibrational level we choose to live and be in determines our reality. So how do we perceive our lives and the world again? And on this earth, if you can call it that, space-time is also a bit different, but let's call it that. Several vibrational levels have been able to coexist there in recent years. But a little while ago, they began to split up. And roughly speaking, it's the case that humanity is dividing more and more into two groups, into two levels of reality. The ones who are intensifying the struggle even more. And it's what's mainly being presented to us out there through the media and so on, mind you, also through the alternative media. They increasingly reinforce, the struggle, also the injustice. They want to be right and create war and enemy images and choose the old matrix, which they are of course allowed to continue serving. And the others, they are distancing themselves more and more from it. They're moving more and more into a higher vibration, turning inward, opening up to the incoming light, and thinking more and more in unity, in we, in life-friendly ways, whereby they choose the new matrix. And as a result, different magnetic fields, matrices and levels actually form on various levels of reality, which then manifest again like an unfolding reality and can be chosen. So like a film that reveals itself more and more before you with every step you take. What happens now if some choose one line and others choose the other? Please also listen to the other podcasts I've made about this. You can often recognize it by the title or down in the show notes where we write a bit about the content. I've already said more about that, but basically, as I perceive it, none of us has to die who doesn't choose it. That's important. Instead, we simply shift into another reality, and for some, it's not even that different from the current one, but for others, it means they make a real leap in reality, depending on how strongly this new choice takes effect. And the new matrix, it also has a completely new level of time and vibration. So it will no longer have anything to do with the old 3D, 4D energies and events, but will vibrate quite purely and clearly in 5D. I'll come back to these terms 3D, 4D, 5D later for those who can't categorize them yet. So the old matrix will continue to exist for a while and then eventually dissolve. People who don't want to live in the higher vibration then choose a new incarnation where their desired experiences are made possible. So anyone who has read and also understood my book Involution knows that we can also incarnate on many possible planets with many experience densities. I also made a separate podcast about that once. Yes, all of this certainly sounds frightening to some people, but strictly speaking, it is an absolutely brilliant opportunity for a gigantic leap in consciousness. And that's why, well, when I say that, I notice that my heart leaps because it's simply quite simple. If you truly practice heart-centeredness and inner love, if you're truly in your heart, if you truly remain in trust that everything happening now belongs and that life is always for you, then you'll get through this time well. Trust in that. It's important that you really stay within yourself and with yourself. Heart centering is truly everything, because then you maintain your own magnetic field. Regardless of whether the shift happens within a few days or in longer stages, this tip always applies. And there's a very fitting quote from Albert Einstein about it. If you tune into the frequency of the reality you're aiming for, then you cannot prevent it from manifesting. It cannot be otherwise. That's not philosophy, that's physics. And now let's come to this multidimensionality. Perhaps it takes away some of the abstractness if we understand what kind of universe we live in and how it's divided into different vibrational levels. Let's briefly go into these levels. It's worth mentioning you can imagine it behaving like a staircase. That means you've reached a step, you see this level, and you can also look down at the lower steps. But you can't look up, you don't see the upper steps yet. Therefore, you can't understand them either. And that's why you might not understand people who vibrate higher than you, and they don't understand you either, although it's always easier to see the distress of others below than to see the development of others above. So our primary levels of perception at the moment, as long as we're incarnated here on Earth, are the named 3D, 4D, and 5D levels. D stands for dimension or also density. They are, so to speak, truly unlocked for us. We can operate them fully consciously. The others then go much more into areas that I'll get to later. 3D. 3D is the world of matter and also the world of the old matrix, the world of systems, the world that is limited to our material and physical aspects. In 3D consciousness, we also perceive time as passing linearly, which is confirmed to us everywhere in this reality. For example, through cycles, day, night, morning, evening, aging, the time of day, whatever. If we perceive exclusively in 3D, then we consider everything else to be nonsensical because, as I said, we cannot see or understand the higher levels. That means you can't do much with spirituality and all that nonsense. 4D is what we call the world that goes beyond these physical senses. So in 4D, we've already understood something. We've already acknowledged that there's more than what we can touch, see, feel, or smell. And we also see, yeah, okay, time exists as something linear, but it can also dissolve. We understand that time is bound to space and behaves differently in expansion or contraction, for example. And we can perceive things from our past in an expanded way. We can even transform them, change them, and then feel this liberation or healing in the now, which is absolutely timeless. That's why we've definitely broken through the third level there. Logically, we can assume exactly the same for our future because all of that is now. So in 4D, we can act on the past and the future. We can fully overlook 3D and also see and understand how limited it was, how small and narrow it was. We're moving on, but in 4D, we haven't mastered all the challenges yet. We see that a lot is going wrong. We're more solution oriented, but we don't necessarily have the solutions yet. So, and 5D is the level in which we can expand much further, in which time and space also behave in a completely new way, and where these solutions are also simply there. They're suddenly there. Suddenly everything behaves differently. Time can then still be perceived as passing linearly because we overlook the lower dimensions, as I said, but it can also open up a space and then show itself in small cycles, but also in large and giant cycles. We grasp it then. We understand through large cycles, so to speak, the connections of world events. That is the basis of what I always give you here, and also of our lives much more clearly. So in 5D consciousness, we are in love, we are in peace, we are in divine order. Of course, we see the other levels in their apparent disorder, and we would like to bring order to them as well. But we also see that it is simply an order of these levels and that it is about continuing to evolve. So in 5D, we cannot help but behave in a life-affirming way. Only what has heart quality and what is truthful counts, meaning whether we are truthful and whether we truly walk our heart's path. So those are the three main levels that are, as I said, relevant for us now. And as long as we haven't, let's say on 5D, where it's headed for most, as long as we haven't really stabilized there, we keep falling out, so to speak. And then we jump, so to speak, between the steps, that is, between the dimensions. And that means that we might vibrate very closely in 3D and somehow think it's all nonsense. Then again, in 4D, overlook this narrowness, can think more across time, but are still searching for ways, for solutions. And then also back in 5D, where we breathe out with such relief because we've left it all behind and are in a harmonious, pleasant, heart-centered vibration. And this jumping in particular, that can be quite exhausting for a while, but it offers an incredibly interesting range of experience and can, of course, settle in faster through our awareness of these levels. The more consciously we understand and observe which level we are currently operating on, like, now I'm fully in 3D, how can I raise my vibration again? The more clearly we can then choose again, right? And that is so important. And in my book, Involution, I also included the Hawkins scale of consciousness. And there you can see and understand and categorize these different vibration levels very well, including the different emotional states we find ourselves in. And you can just play with it and see how to get to the next higher one. Because we are truly endowed with this creative power at every moment of our lives, precisely through our choice. But no one can take that choice away from us. That the choice is ours. Yes, and depending on where you are right now, in this process, you naturally have very different perceptions of it. You jump between levels of reality, between timelines, and that's also perfectly fine. It's a transitional period. It won't be like this forever. I especially want to mention that we are noticing this jumping or even the development in our partnerships and other relationships very much right now. We notice it when we choose different timelines, and we also notice it when other people choose different timelines. And we notice this in a way that is actually new. So I've spoken with many people about this recently and will make a separate podcast about it because I believe it's very, very important now that we don't get entangled again, but really understand what's going on here and go one level higher. It's a very strange energy. So these people, it can happen from one day to the next that they don't get along at all anymore, don't understand each other at all, that even the smallest things can no longer be resolved. But as I said, I'll go deeper into that in the next podcast because it's really also connected with a very, very much love and a very deep realization. So basically, always be aware that everyone is exactly where they need to be right now. You too, me too, and the others too. There is no competition here. No one is better or worse because they are currently exploring a different step. I say that again and again. We are all creators, but we explore different dimensions intensively. And thinking in hierarchies or in better and worse here, that's 3D, you see? That is exactly the lowest level we can operate on. So get out of such judgment and just be happy about this incredible range of vibrational levels. You are exactly where you are, right? And life always gives you exactly what you need right now to grow. And there are no mistakes. There is only a wide range of opportunities for experience. Choose consciously. So those were these main levels. And beyond that, there are many more levels. That was also very nicely broken down by Burkhard Heim. There are also books about that. The higher dimensions with ever finer perceptions and an ever clearer presence of the divine, of the Christ consciousness, which we all are. It turns out that we mostly operate within a 12-dimensional cosmos. At least that's what's been defined so far and what can somehow still be explored and recognizable. And I've already made a podcast about that. Well, not about the 12 dimensions, but about time and its multidimensional possibilities. And there's also a lot of info in there, a lot of valuable info in there. Feel free to listen to it if you don't know it or listen to it again. It's really very, very valuable for understanding things better here. I want to share an image with you about the dimensions that I had many years ago when I didn't know anything about dimensions and was in a very, very difficult life situation. And there I saw myself in a room and I was always running into walls. So I was locked in this room and I just couldn't, there was no door, I couldn't find the exit and it was terrible. It was a really awful feeling. And somehow I then saw myself from above down there in this room, how I was running against these walls. And suddenly I saw how Sandra down there lifts her gaze and realizes the top is open, the room has no ceiling at all. That's the way. And then I understood that everything is about raising your vibration. And if we now transfer that to these dimensions, these space-time dimensions, then it makes total sense. The first 4 dimensions, space-time, are comparable to a closed room from which there seems to be no way out until we realize that it has no ceiling, that we can escape it if we leave it upwards. Upwards means through our own insight and raising our vibration. And raising your vibration is always love. Yes, just a little ending because this is still important. Regarding manifestation, choosing timelines, the frequently mentioned solar storms, solar flares, I simply call them strong solar energies because they are absolutely helpful. They are very, very helpful and they shouldn't be seen negatively, but we should really be happy and embrace this process. We are truly being given so much because this strengthens the neutrino streams. And that in turn simply means our power of manifestation is multiplying. Because neutral neutrinos, as I've explained in detail many times, are the primordial particles that, paired with our vision and our feelings, our heart's power, are transformed into earthly reality, thus manifesting themselves. Our strongest power of manifestation comes through our heart. When practically clear thought power from above, meaning clear visions, mixes with earthly forces and also physical experience from below, then we have the ideal setting through our heart to bring everything together onto the canvas of our life into manifestation. And now this is important. As long as we vibrate with our environment and think like our environment, we also always manifest collectively. If we want to manifest quite uniquely for ourselves, then we must step out of the belief that we are material beings. Yes, we are incarnated into a body and into a material world, but that doesn't mean that's all we are. We are much, much more than that. The material is a part of us, and we can quite easily master this part from a higher perspective. When we enter this consciousness again, then we change our brain and the way it has functioned until now by adding completely new neural circuits. And through this, we move from survival mode into living mode. With that, you are creative power. You cause your brain to work anew, to be creative, to be productive. Through new circuits, you no longer live in the past and in the masses, but in what you choose. And your body, it believes what is arising within you and begins to behave as if what you want to create in your mind has already taken place. All matter will behave this way, and that is truly the high art. Learn it, use it. Layer by layer, I have stripped away the old matrix from myself. I am detached from it, yet in the same body. New clarity permeates my being, gathering in my heart as a strong force. In heart connection with all life, I give fear a decisive rejection and love a clear yes. Knowing that I am never alone but always all one, I hold the field. For me and for thousands who want the same. For the new world. Together our hearts pulse deep love into the new matrix. We came here for this, so we will make it too.